Well, on to the next part of the project. You've got to take your victories in stages, otherwise it's just too overwhelming. You don't feel like getting anywhere. So I've used the neighbour's bed frame, stripped all the upholstery off with my wife Lisa, and using that for a template. Rather than, I don't have anything this long, and this is quite thick. It looks like MDF, and I'm going to make this right along the top of the doors here will be the arc that this takes from one pillar to the next through the body. So it's the top of the doors will sit obviously 3/16 5mm below that for your normal door gap. So I've got to determine that, and it's one of the few curves I'm keeping is the top of the doors, because I am going to use everything from this door from the belt line to the top. So the windows and everything in the vertical all stay the same, but they will be made longer. So this here, from here to there, is how much longer the front door will become. So what's that? That's about just under 130 millimeters, which would be just over 5 inches. Yeah, 5 inches. It's getting longer. And the rear door, 115 mil, which is about 4.5 inches. Why the difference? Well, that surprised me as well initially, because the window length is identical between the two, but this here is a lot narrower than this, but this matches this, but this back section doesn't match the very front section. So that's where the extra 20 mil 3/4 an inch comes into play. So to make the arc fit this top of this profile as much as possible, I've set this straight edge level with the window line, and that is also running parallel with the template line. So I know if the distance from that end of the straight edge to the template and this end to the template is identical, the window line and hence the belt line will all stay as it should. It'll all stay in line, because that's going, even though it will be tilted up on more of an angle than stock, that still has to stay in a dead straight line, and that relationship between the window sill and the top of the door is staying the same. So to work out how to extend that arc, what I've done is I've set this up exactly where this door will sit, as in its total length, and I've drawn up past halfway, because I'm going to, right in the middle of this arc here is where I'm going to add my extra 5 inches or 4.5 inches in the back door. And what I'll do then is I'll unclamp the door, move it to the other end, still keeping the straight edge to template distance the same, and then scribe back just over halfway this way, and that way you'll get a crossover. You can see I've got the pencil line stopping there at the moment, and so when I move this door and then pull it this way, I'll get the arc that I need to add right in the middle of the door. This one's a bit more complicated, because this edge here, even though it's supposed to match with there, is already lower by 5mm 3/16 than the top edge of here. So I can't add this in the middle, because this is a slope continuing up, rather than this one which goes up and back down again. I hope I'm not getting too complex, but the distance from here to the straight edge at both ends of the back door are identical. So that is your center point, and then it drops off towards the back of the car that way, and the arc drops right across the whole front door to the front. So the highest point in the arc is right in the middle of the back door, and then it slopes both ways. So I've drawn this arc all the way up to here, and all I'll do is I'll keep that same arc and continue it into this door. And then for the back half of this door, I'll move this across and draw back to the centre line again. I hope I explained it well, but it's taken me a little while to work out how to get this nice flowing arc that suits the top of these doors after they're modified for the length. So I hope that was a good enough explanation. So excited to start on a new part. So soon these door openings will be fully framed. Alright, template made from the neighbour's bed, not that they know. So you saw how I made the shape following the contours of the existing door, and added an extra 20 mil because that's how much at the front, which I thought of fortunately before I cut it out, because that's how much wider I'm making this B pillar for some this A pillar here where the hinges go. For some reason this is narrower than all the others, so I wanted to even them up, keep the glass the same as in relation to each other, so they're both the same length, and that the doors become the same overall length. So it's not quite as much that I'm adding on as to what I showed earlier. So that's all done. I've also made a set of, from the other side of the bed, another set of vertical body templates to be a lot more accurate, that won't move around, not be flimsy like the play ones I'm using. But gee, look how much that drops off. Don't forget, this is the window line, so the window sill. What I mean about window sill, this here, so the bottom of your window, from one end to the other, and that curve that you can see it drop down, it gives it that sort of gangster wedge shape. So ignore the bottom of the door, it's the top of this which determines how much the front drops down compared to the rest. So from here to the top of there is 391 millimetres, which includes the 5 millimetre gap that will be above the doors. And here it's only 318. So it just shows you how much it just suddenly, whoop, but it gives you that more aggressive look rather than a sort of upright square box on wheels. You want that aggression in it. And you can also see where this was basically flat before, and what I mean flat, not as in the curve, but the horizon line of the gutter, that I've increased this to 2.5 degrees. So you can really see, yes, I've got a digital one, but I still prefer the ease of the good old protractor. So this is right from the beginning, it was all set up there, and part of that reason is that clear the top of the dash, but also when you look through the back rearmost window behind the doors, that you don't have the parcel shelf higher than it. And I've only just learnt also, this is a stylising trick that Chip Fuse, only learnt that last week, puts into his vehicles. He does that to a lot of, he's done a couple of vehicles now where he's basically wedged them. So I might have even gone more if I'd known someone as talented at that did it. I was just thinking, oh, what's that going to come out like? But I think this is enough. Who knows? It might be the same as what he's doing. He doesn't say how many degrees he wedges them, but I'm happy with the outcome of that overall shape. So I've already cut these pillars down to the exact height they need to do, but I've just set up the template so I know where this ends up. So when I'm building the piece that comes down here, where this is going to end up. The front of this pillar will actually remain longer because the the top of the gutter is actually the bottom, is the top of the glass on the front, so the windscreen sits up a bit higher. So that doesn't make sense, but didn't to me either. But you can see it here already, how the top of the windscreen here, and don't forget normally there was an inner frame that folded out on these, is level with the end of the gutter here. That all lines up. And when you look inside, the inner trim comes down and then is level across the top of the window there. So not where the window, so the window line is actually lower, except if you take the original inner frame into account. So I'm going to have to think about that when I'm building the window, but I'm going to have the rubber sit in here, which would be about the same thickness and height, that's what I've based it on, as what the window frame was. So your glass opening, your clear glass part, will match at the front. So all these little things that you've got to think about the whole time. It's the same with, I'm already working out when this comes across to the gutter and stops there, then of course the roof's going to go up from here. But that on its own there's no structural strength in that, there's no torsional rigidity or anything like that. So I want to come up this way, and because then you get vertical strength, but you still have not increased your torsional strength very much at all, because you can twist angle line. Now, what is something you can't twist very well, hard as well, even harder than box section, is triangulated section. So I am going to triangulate up to here and then down to there, because don't forget the roof will come up and clear that. So I'm already in my head designing how this is going to attach to the gutter here, and as well as how it's going to attach when this comes up to take it. Because remember, strength is in dimension, not in thickness. You can put a piece of 10mm plate across there, or a 1/2 inch plate, and it'll still twist. You've only got your 1/2 inch of vertical strength, so it doesn't help you. But if you get something much thinner and you get dimension to it, sectional width, then there's a lot stronger thing, and you can't compress a triangle. So taking off what was there before on the donor, and that's where I'm basing some of my ideas from, but just from general engineering. I used to study structural engineering, so a long time ago, even as for building, principles still apply. All right, nice update. See ya. What I find remarkable is how much steel you use. Now, this was a 1200 by 2400 sheet, or 8x4, full size 18 gauge 1.2mm sheet, and all I've made are these pillars and the connecting, and I'm really frugal with my metal. I mean, there's my gloves to give you reference. There's not much left, and I save everything. I mean, we're talking little bits like this that I've saved. I've carefully cut around. I keep this under the cardboard here because I find it stops the surface rust, because the moisture lands on it and causes the surface rust. So I'm keeping all my templates, which I'll still need for future reference, on top and covering it up. Or I store it vertically, like I do with the other sheets that I've got over against the wall there. But and I've also used, don't forget, 2 of those big cabinet doors to make the C-pillars as well. And it's not including the inside. The inside pillars are all from the donor vehicle. So it's amazing. You go, oh, where's all my time gone? Well, it's cut up this 8x4 sheet, and I've only got this bit left. I'm going to have to go. And I thought that was going to do my entire door frames as well. Gee, that was... I obviously have to get a few more sheets. So, yeah, surprising. Like even these pieces here, the outsides were left over from some shelving. So you use a lot of steel very quickly. And it's amazing, well, not quickly, it's taken me a long time, but at least I know where the labour's gone. It's gone into cutting up a 8x4 sheet into lots of little shapes. So this curve here looks straight, but it's not, is the curve of the upper door frame. This curve here is the curve of the window frame. So it'll be folded this way, but then it's got to step up again, like this step here, for the door seal to sit against, and then it's got to come back out again before the rest is added. So for the roof profile, so what I'm talking about here is this side, is the outside, coming up with that little step that I put in for the pinch weld seal, coming out this way, then going up and then going out to this edge, and then later I'll join the roof skin onto here, which will have that bead in it, and then go around, and that creates the top of the door roof skin. And this triangulated piece, which will get spot welded in there before the roof goes on, will go from here up on an angle and then up here and join the inside piece and spot welded there again. So I don't have to fully seam weld, and this becomes a big triangulated brace that will run horizontally. So if you can imagine, the bottom of it goes this way, which is made up of the inner and outer flanges the pinch weld attaches to, and then there'll be a triangulated base that will meet the back of this one. I'd be shocked if someone understands what I'm saying. Above this pillar, and then coming back down like this. This is an extra piece I'm putting in to strengthen that from one end to the other, and that's got to follow the body curve as well, like does it. yeah. Simple. Yeah, right. Wow, anyway, I've got the concept in my head. Let's see if it works out. Alrighty. I don't know how well this camera and this light is showing up all these lines. So you got one through here, the very bottom line, and that is to match the bottom of the window opening. Okay, then you got the next line here, which is taken from this template. So the first one is from the cardboard template, and I even flipped it over to make sure that both the left and right sides were identical, as in drew it over halfway on the side because I had a little cut here, so I thought, well, do it halfway, flip it over, that way you got symmetrical. So this represents the gutter line, which is also the top of the window shape, door shape, not window. So that's the second line. Alright, so that's where, so this is the cutout for the opening. This is going to be the bend curve. So now we're coming this way. So that'll have to be done in the tipping wheel because it's on a curve. Then we've got 3 more. Now the next curve here is from this template, which is the body curve, because don't forget now this folded this way from that line, the gutter line, is now horizontal. So this curve represents the curve of the body this way, because this will be sitting up there. So now the template is sitting like this, and the fingertips here is what this outside curve is going to be. But that is only then curving that in that horizontal plane, but it has to go follow the gutter line as well as go the body line at the same time. So how am I going to do that? Well, that's part of the order of operations. So the first thing I'll do is I'll cut out the top of the window shape. Then I'll run it through the bead rollers, put that step in it. Then I'll tip it there, so then I've got an angle line shape. So I've got an L shape now. So I've got to do that. Then I've got to tip it the opposite way. So then, but then it'll be straight on the horizontal, and I need it curved, as well as, oh God, I can't even explain it to you. Anyway, so this curve here will give the gutter line. The next curve will give the body line, but it still needs to have the gutter curve in it as well. So that's going to be done with a shrinker stretcher, stretching over this and stretching that to put that curve in while still keeping the body curve this way, and then it's got to be tilted again back to horizontal after that. So I'm going to try and do it all in one piece. We'll see how that works out. But I'm thinking, at the worst, I'm just, wasting that last little bit rather than welding that piece of angle line that I spoke of first on the end. Well, why not try and see if it works? Otherwise you can just cut it off and then still weld that piece on later. For the minimum loss of possible material, it's worth trying to do it in one piece and save that whole weld. And you've got to think of that is over all these four, so each one is nearly a metre or over 3 feet, and you're doing that 4 times. That saves a lot of extra welding, and that's only to talk about the outside of the upper door frame. I haven't even talked about doing the inside. So alright, we're going to be brave and see if we can do it in one piece, because what have you got to lose? Just a little bit of material if you've got to cut it off and do that separately. Alright, wish me luck. If you understand it, you're doing better than I am. I hope you can hear me. I've tried to wait until the rain eased a bit, but it's just come back on as soon as I turn the camera back on. Alright, as you can see, I've passed through the step dies first to get that bottom lip where the pinch seam seal goes on, using that bottom set of dies. It was actually set up for a 6mm step and I didn't have a 5, so I made little sleeves for it that I on the lathe and then pressed them over. And so now I'm in the process of tipping it, so I think I'm halfway through my 4th pass now. So as it's moving along, I'm pushing up on here and just using this as a fulcrum, and it's got a soft lower die, but it's also causing, because of the radius this way, it's also causing a curve that way. So that will have to be straightened out, or I take the risk of, when I fold the next fold back this way, does it straighten it out? I think you'd end up with convex curve that way, and this one would be a concave curve that way. Depends which way you view it. Concave that way, convex that way, that's it. So I normally always straighten it out between change of curves, because it's a lot easier to do before you've got more and more thing in the way. So I'll probably use the flat dies of the English wheel as much as possible to flatten it out, and the rest will just be over a dolly with a slapper. So anyway, progress. All right, I've turned it to 90 degrees after going as far as I can with the tipping die, and I've done most of it both over that little plate that I shaped with a curve in it, as well as a compound dolly that sits on there. But you can see with that working over, and also the tipping wheel itself, I think I'll reduce the pressure on the next one, has caused that edge to stretch. I've done a little bit of clean up, as you can see, the width of the English roller, where I've just pushed it through flat dies just to get rid of the hammer marks. But now that corner has now been stretched where it has been rolled over on the curve. So how do you repair that? Because I can't leave it like that with too much curve, because that means this curve has also been affected and made tighter than it was. That would be logical. I haven't checked this, so let's see. There you go. You can see, oops, sorry, from there to there, look how much it's gained through the middle there from that template what that was cut on. So because this side has been stretched with the rollover, this edge here also needs to be stretched, and I'll just use that in the shrinker stretcher as far as I can go, as in up to here, and see if I can stretch that back out again. So by stretching this, it'll help reduce the curve that's made on the opposite side. Basically, the amount that curve there stretched the material, you've got to do the same on the inside here to bring it back to what it needs to be and what it was before it got turned. All right, so let's see how it turns out. Okie dokie, a couple of minutes later. Oop, not move too fast. You can see the little stretch marks there. Put it in the stretcher. And I also ran it through the English wheel just to even it all out. And you can see it now follows that template. And also, more importantly, this, there we go, this also follows the cardboard template of that, the shape of that upper window there. All right. I've always check everything before the next fold, and I just noticed by folding on a curve, it has also opened up this gap. See, it's touching there. It's a little hard to see like this, and it's probably a good 4mm 532 extra in the middle that it's curving this way. The problem with that is I can't go any further. Let's see if I can show it this way. Sorry, getting distracted. There you go. It might even be 3/16 5mm. See, it closes off to nothing there. So the problem is to straighten that, to force the middle this way, you shrink this edge, and you're creating a curve normally that way. Of course, you just do it enough to make that go straight. Well, I've only got a shrinker that goes in this far, and then as soon as you tip it up, that would be gone. It needs to be gradually shrunk all the way in. and this is way too wide. You can only do an inch and a half maximum, and this is much wider than that. What's this? Looks like 5 inches or something. Yeah, nearly 4 3/4 inches. There's no way my little shrinker with the little 1-inch jaws are going to have an effect all the way over there, and even then when you tip the next one up, it's gone. Alright, I've had my thinking cap on. The outside of this curve, outside this fold, into cause it to bend this way. Alright, that's the way it's bending now. So in theory, I'll put that in quotation marks, the outside of the curve here, going back that way, will cause it to curve this way on the next fold because it's to the direct opposite. There is obviously a difference in these two curves. So in theory, tipping this up would cause this side to straighten. Well, all right. So, second fold, just tipped and then flattened a little bit through there, because you always get a little bit of a curve as you're levering up on the tipping wheel. So I flattened it through the English wheel and then did the final tip on top of that stake there. So this is still essentially straight. There's a little bit of curve in it left to right as you look at this, which will be up and down, and it needs to match that gutter line, so it needs more, which I knew. I've got to shrink, expand, stretch that top edge to get that curve. But what did it do with that first curve that was out? Did it straighten it? Well, hang on, I'm getting it to sit. There we go. It reduced it. It was 4 to 5 mil, or 532 to 3/16 before, and it is probably, whoop, close to half of that. Be a bit over an eighth, I think, so not quite. So no, the theory was there, but in practice, that is a good 3 to mil, I reckon, maybe 4. So it barely moved at all, which is really disappointing. That's why so many things are made in multiple pieces. So what's next? I've got to still stretch this outer edge until it matches the upper gutter curve, and then it still has to be tipped one more time the other way. So hopefully it followed this curve at least, which is the body template. Hang on, there we go. Yes. So it did follow the body template, which is at least one thing I don't have to correct, which is excellent. And so now I'll make this curve match the gutter curve. And then we'll see where we're at. Who knows, maybe it even distorts the first curve. All right. Next day. I don't know why I did that, that's weird. Looking at the background. So, how do I repair this? Now, I've had overnight to think about this. This is the next afternoon. So, this face here is curving inwards, and it needs to be dead straight. It's about 4 mil out, I would approximate. I should 4 mil? Probably less. Although I think that now that end is sticking out a little bit. Anyway, it's 4 or 5 mil out. No. Alright, so how do we move it away from this flange? You've got to move it across this way. Now, the options are, I could say cut along here, say 20 mil away. I can then put that in the shrinker and get that perfectly straight again. But then when you go to weld it back on here, you'll have it slowly getting wider to whatever the deflection is, about say 4 mil 532. 532? Yeah, I think so. And then tapering back off again. So that's too big a gap to really fill. Now, there are ways you could cut it out, straighten it, and then weld a wider strip on, and then trim that back and weld back on. So you have 2 weld seams down there from one end to the other. The other way I've done sometimes too is you cut it, I put some copper plate underneath it, and then you can just add weld to that edge, grind that back, and then attach it to this. Or even when you've got the gap in between, have the copper under it and fill it that way. So they're all different ways of doing it. It would cause a lot of shrinkage, bringing it back that way, but you would then stretch that weld or welds back out again. So they're definitely possibilities. The other way, I might give that a go. We need a little bit more material along here. So you can't sneak it from here and over the top, because then you reduce this height here and you would also alter this curve. So that's not really an option. The other way would be to just carefully stretch along here, which will put more material in and it will push this edge that way. Now, I haven't done it in a very long time, but there is a technique where normally you use a low crown, but you could probably do it with even the flat one here, is you tilt under the axle here, you just put a little spacer, so exaggerated, this is sitting like that, so I could pass the metal through and it'll only be stretching and making contact on the edge. So that's probably worth a try, because is to literally stretch all the way along, right along here, and that extra stretching will have to go somewhere. And because it's closer to this edge, it should push that across. So I think I might try that first. It's the least destructive out of the whole lot. Alright, so I've just got a little shim under there. And you can, I ground this originally flush. You can see it's sitting up that little bit. So it's probably 1.5 mil thick or something, and you can see now clearly how it's only touching on one side. So I'm hoping that by passing the panel through here, that I can concentrate enough to force the expansion right up near that fold and push it across. So we'll see. Don't know how this will show up, but anyway, I'll talk behind the camera. That's where the mic is. It's been going really well. I've probably down to less than half, around 2 to 1.5 mil left of bow. So I was just showing you what I'm doing. Remember, this side here is what's got the pressure on, so I'm trying to force the metal to go this way, across this way. So I'm using a lot of pressure because I'm trying to get a difference between the tension here and there by forcing it that way. If I went all the way across, it would start just getting thinner rather than moving one way or the other. That'll be my hub centric rings. You need a pretty good stiff frame. I'll work that out a little bit from there. I'm not past halfway. Now, it will bend the fold out this way a little bit. So make sure that it only folds in that corner there. While it's under the wheel, tap right next to the wheel, like that, wherever it needs it. Because the pressure of the wheel so close to the join is trying to open it up. So by just going along and sighting it, you can fold it back to vertical again. So we'll go and check it. I've been checking against this template the whole time. You can see it's caused it to bow a little bit more, because, which is obvious because you're stretching there, so it wants to. So I shrink this edge to get that curve straight again. So all along I've been checking. Look at that. Where's that gap now? So, there you go. Well, we're down to about a millimetre just in this spot here, and the rest of it's all gone. You can see where it's polished. That's where the wheel has been running to stretch that side outwards. So yeah, it's working well. It's a hell of a lot better than cutting this apart, adding a little bit in and straightening everything. So I'll do the final straightening of everything, and I've got to double check this side because this tension might have taken some of this curve out. So we'll just have to see what it's done. So overall, good success. All right. Everything checks out well. So this curve here all matches. So that is the same curve that's in the bottom of the body will be in the gutter this way. Then the curve this way, the vertical curve, matches this one, as well as this curve here matches that. Bit hard to see. And then this one matches the template down the bottom there. So all those things have to match, as well as being straight this way. So what's the next step? Next step is to, you can just see where I've scribed that line using a back gauge. This now needs to be tipped vertically this way, and hope that none of this edge gets distorted when this is brought up vertically, which is what happened last time. So we'll see. I'm going to do as little pressure as possible on the tipping wheel, which I've got set up over there, so as not to stretch this edge and affect the outcome. So we'll just see what happens. Wish me luck. Alright, for some reason I forgot to record tipping that last flange. So while I'm chatting here, I'll insert some photos of what happened. So, as I feared, tipping this flange to horizontal removed the curve out of the lower fold, because don't forget you're shrinking here to put that curve in vertically, and then when you tip it over you lose a lot of that tension because now that's gone horizontal. So you really need to deep throat the shrinks all the way, just try and keep some tension there. So what I ended up doing, as you'll see in the photos, is running my TIG just as a heat source. You've got to run pretty quickly all along this edge here, and then when it cools it shrunk, and then put that bow back in again. And I thought, oh, you beauty, I'm done. And then I discovered that the thinner part of the template that I'd been doing all my checks against had put even more arch into it. And then, so when I checked it against that thicker template that I've got, suddenly I had too much arch. I mean, not as much as before I put the arch back in, but still I then had to go and stretch some of this on the inside corner to pull it back out again. So it was a real rigmarole. But anyway, it's in. So I hope now all that ridiculous showing of what I'm trying to achieve, for one last time, this arc here, the cutout, is the shape of the top of the window opening. So when you look through the window, it is nothing sticking out, and I've got as much sort of beef in the corners, and when you're looking from the outside, from the inside out, you don't suddenly see part of the window frame and then it disappears. So this, once that seal sits on it, it will follow that window line all the way. So then it comes out here till it's flush, and on the other side it's 8mm in, just like at the bottom there. And then it sits out ½ an inch this way. So that is the same as that, along there and all the way along here. And that's eventually the roof will get that bead in it and then curve around like that, and so the roof panel sits like that and it attaches right along this edge here. Most likely at that time I'll cut this back a little bit, and then the roof panel will come butt up against it, go have that bead and then go around like that. So there you go, that was a rigmarole. I just have to repeat it 3 more times on the inside, and then I have to make the inside panels that butt up against here and then go up above the roof line another 4 more times. So I've learnt a lot of things, and that's what you got to do. Find things that you can improve on, like I'll make sure that I've got too much arch in here before I tip this over, and then you hope that you've calculated. It's always going to be a hit and miss there on how much is enough, but I know that it was 8mm gap, so I put an extra 8mm of arch in and it should flatten out. And I've since done the other side, and that is what worked out, so it was a lot less trouble. Alright, if you watch this all the way through, then you're incredible. I wasn't about to even post this because it was so long-winded, and I've already probably cut 30 minutes of it out. Alright, see ya.